All right, hey folks, and welcome to iWizard. So tonight we have a special guest with us. Dave Butler is a fantasy and science fiction author. He's written numerous books under the name DJ Butler. I have a copy of one of them here, Abbott in Darkness. He is also the author of the Witchy War series, the one that just recently caught my eye was the Time Trial series. That is one I'm definitely going to read. Very cool. I am putting that on my TBR because that looks right up my alley. Dave was an editor for Baen Books for quite a while and a terrific editor at that. I happen to know that. He now serves as senior editor for the brand new publishing house, Ark Press. Dave, thanks for coming on, man.
Jordan, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. So we did a roundtable together on Christopher Rocchio's channel about what makes for fantasy literature. So this would be my second, no, actually third time we went out for sushi
We did.
when Christopher had his book signing in New
Yeah,
Hampshire.
in
We all met up
Nashua.
for sushi. That was a great time. So it's nice to connect with you again. Let's start with this. And we'll get to the Arc Press stuff a little bit later.
Cool.
I'm going to lay a big one on you.
Oh,
So I remember when we met up for sushi, uh, you told me that you had had this whole career as a lawyer.
mm.
And I was looking at your Wikipedia page. I said I better like get my information straight. I saw that you got your law degree from NYU and that you
Oh yeah.
worked as a lawyer for a decade. And from what I gather, you walked away from that to, kind of dedicate your life to books and writing and editing. Why did you do that? Why did you leave that world to enter this one? Because that's a fascinating backstory.
Yeah. Um, it turns out there are a lot of refugees from the law into literature, and it turns out that's an old tradition that goes back at least to Chaucer. So the uh, the simple answer is that I never wanted to be a lawyer to begin with. That was a sort of a punt. That was a compromise with the financial realities of the world. So I thought I was going to be a writer, and specifically an epic fantasy writer, since I was about 7 years old, which is when I read Tolkien for the first time because my dad went on a trip to an academic conference, and that was the gift he brought back for me. And I put
Oh,
myself
wow.
into bed and didn't get out of my bed until I'd read all four books: Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Um, and I did the kind of things that you do. I sort of chased down all the fantasy that I could find. And at the time, this is like circa 1980, a lot of it was very Tolkien imitative, right? But of course there were also the pulp writers, and I read everything I could, read voraciously, and thought I was going to be an epic fantasy writer. Wrote a very bad novel in high school, but pretty confident that no copies of that exist in any format. Um, Fortunately, and then in college, I decided I wanted to get married, and the girl didn't really want to be poor, and that seemed fair. Um, and so I went to law school. I didn't have a plan. I heard, people with law degrees do a wide range of things. That's true. What they don't tell you when they're saying that is people that have massive amounts of debt can't do a wide range of things. They are compelled to take the biggest paying job they can get.
Yeah.
And again, it was a punt, and I was young. I hadn't really thought it all the way through. So I went to the best school that admitted me, which was New York University School of Law, which was wonderful. Except that they can go ahead and stop asking me for money because I had to pay full tuition. So they got theirs from me up front. Um, but it was great to move to New York. I was basically a small town kid. Had lived in various places, but basically, a small town kid from Utah, and I moved to New York City and went to school in Greenwich Village, and the world suddenly became considerably more left and Jewish and gay than I was used to, you know, which was great. It was wonderful. It has very, opened my horizons, expanded my horizons. Um, and NYU was a very good school, and I got a job out of there. working for a very big firm headquartered in the UK. And in fact, so the summer internship, the summer associate job that I had in the second summer was with Clifford Chance, which was this English firm. It was at the time, I don't know if it still is, but it was arguably the largest law firm in the world. Okay, depending on how you counted. Baker and McKenzie had kind of a franchise model. They like to claim they were bigger. Anyway, whatever. Enormous law firm headquartered in London. So during my summer associate period, I spent like 8 weeks in New York City and 4 in London. And in the London office, I said, "Hey man, you ought to just start here. We're trying to build a U.S. securities practice." So I did. So I went and did securities law in New York in London for 5 years, and then for a year in New York. And this is not a thing I'd ever wanted to do. This is where the punt took me. I made great income for those, especially the years in London. I was getting paid a high salary and an expat package. So I had borrowed $150,000. I paid it all off within 3 years. Rented a big old house in the country. It was terrific. I learned a lot of stuff. It was a way to get a kind of an education about business and the world. I don't regret it, but I never wanted to do that, and my heart was never in it. So I did that for 6 years. 6 years to the day. Left the firm and went in-house. Trying to figure out how to get out of the law entirely, but the first step was to get into a less all-consuming legal job. A job where you're not so much at the merciless demands of clients and crises. So I went in-house. I was in-house for 5 years at 3 different semiconductor manufacturers, microchip manufacturers, living up in Boise at the time. And I should say all during this 3 years of law school and 11 years of legal practice, I didn't write novels, but I did actually write several spec scripts and try and mail off pitch cards to Hollywood. That never went anywhere. I also got a recording studio and guitars and stuff, and started songwriting. And the year I got my Tascam 788 8-channel recording standalone unit, I recorded an album for all of my nieces and nephews, which I called "Stop Singing Crazy Uncle Dave," and I wrote a song for each one and put it on this. Played every part, sang the harmonies, played the banjo lines, programmed the drums. So I was doing kinds of writing, right? What happened in 2010 was I was chief corporate counsel at a billion-dollar manufacturer. It was a great job, objectively, just a great job. I worked in a little rental office down the street from my home in Eagle, Idaho, and I had reports in the Philippines and in China and in Italy and in San Francisco. And it was a great job. And we sold the company, which was the goal. And I got kind of a payday. It wasn't like generational wealth, but it was enough money that I could not work for a couple of years. And if I'd been the kind of guy who just loved law, what I would have done at that point is take the money, awesome, pay off my mortgage, look for my next in-house job, and it should have been like a general counsel job. Instead, at that point, I took 2 years off and tried to write novels. And a lot of the success I have had in the 15 years since is rooted in what I did in those 2 years. So my first novel, total trash. I started having migraines. I wrote this novel. I gave it to my wife and my friend Eric. My wife came back and had several devastating comments, and I thought, well, what do you know? Then my friend Eric came back with the same comment. I was like, oh crap. And I lay awake all night. I literally had my first migraine, lying on a couch thinking, what am I doing? Right. I've burned 45 days of my runway, and it's disaster. But my second book, I got an agent. And
which book was that?
It's never been published actually yet. Because the history is that agent couldn't sell it. Then my wife subsequently decided that she also thought she'd try her hand at writing. And the first couple of things she did were to take things that I had written and basically do a sort of a re-theming or a re-skinning of them. So she actually sold that book.
Wow.
I wrote it in Victorian England. She reimagined it in Federalist Boston. She sold it to a publisher called Egmont, which was headquartered in Scandinavia, and which was making this push to take over the U.S. market. We got all the way to Arks printed, and then Egmont decided they weren't hitting the targets they wanted. They were done. So they just left. They left the market and they stranded all of their unpublished books. Literally, we got a box of like 24 Arks, and then, hey, here's your rights backs. Rights back, we're out. Yeah, it's called The Case of the Devil's Interval, and it may get published yet. There's sort of a project in the works that may publish it next year. We'll see. It's a story of an 8-year-old girl who, along with her family, is murdered, which transforms her into a ghost, and it's kind of a superhero story. It's this ghost of a hellaciously intelligent 8-year-old girl solving crimes and fighting evil using a drunk failed actor and a couple of orphans as her sort of frontmen to go interact with people and things for her. It was great. I got an agent with it. He dumped me a year later. This is when I wrote Witchy Eye, wrote a lot of the stuff. So 2 years, got an agent, had an agent. He couldn't sell a book, got dumped, started self-publishing, and then I needed cash, so I went and got into corporate training. So I've been a corporate trainer for over a decade. That has always been just a means to get cash flow, and so since 2010, the thing I have been trying principally to advance is my literary career. So my 20th and 21st novel will come out later this year. As you say, I'm senior editor at Ark Press, so I've got editorial projects going on as well.
Right. All right, so switching gears, I wanted to ask you a radically different question, one that's a little less personal, but I guess a little more abstract. Why do we need fantasy and sci-fi? Or we can even broaden this question out. Why do we need speculative fiction? Why is it important? I ask this because I'm an English and philosophy teacher, and my colleagues find my obsession with this stuff to be really weird. They all read literary fiction, sometimes they'll go a little lowbrow and read thrillers and mysteries at the beach or at the airport. But really, none of them read fantasy and sci-fi. I have a colleague, Steve, good buddy of mine, and I've asked him, why don't you read more fantasy and sci-fi? He's a big reader. And his answer was because a lot of it's really bad. And he's a really thoughtful, smart guy with good taste. He teaches the Shakespeare course at my school. He teaches AP literature. He's a brilliant guy. And as it happens, he's going to be the godfather of my son, who is due in October. And so I get where he's coming from, and I respect his taste and stuff like that. But I guess I'll put the question to you: why does speculative fiction matter? What's its
Yeah,
value? And in a world with so many options, why should people still read it?
yeah. Interesting question. So there's a science fiction writer named Theodore Sturgeon who formula expressed a view that has sometimes been identified as Sturgeon's law, which is 90% of everything is crap.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so it's stacking the deck to say,
Hmm.
oh, over here in literary fiction we have Moby Dick, but most fantasy is bad. Guess what? Most novels are bad.
Yeah.
Actually, is the thing. Most novels are bad. Um, so speculative fiction is first of all, it gets very hard, or not hard. It gets very arbitrary when you start drawing lines between genres to say, well, this is science fiction. Well, this one is steampunk. Well, this is science. This is fantasy. Oh, this one's science fantasy, right? Speculative fiction broadly is fiction where you allow
Hmm.
yourself to relax some of the rules um, of day-to-day reality as we experience them, right? There are vampires maybe in your story, or there are magicians, or there are ray guns, right? And by the way, at a very practical level, the distinction between science fiction and fantasy is that science fiction has ray guns and fantasy has dragons.
Yeah.
There are more there's a good long discussion to have about sort of philosophically what's going on at the heart of those. I think they are at their heart they are meaningfully different. So I think um, first of all, I think literary novels that don't allow themselves to ask what if questions about societal organization and about technology do not allow themselves to address really important parts of the human experience. If you're not allowed to imagine spaceships, right? I just watched a thing from Elon Musk. I don't know who he was talking to. There's a 2 minute clip. I saw this on X like half an hour ago. And he was talking about the future of humanity. And he said, look, what if it costs us 1% of our collective resources on planet Earth to get out into space? He says, I think that's totally worth it. Because what it does is it de-risks our species. It says if something happens to this planet, this biome, we still exist, right? And it allows us to expand, explore, continue, um, and survive certain kinds of catastrophes. Now, that is a question that literary fiction that will not engage in science fiction type thinking can't even address. So, I think that's a big interesting kind of question, right? I think you look at something like a Canticle for Leibowitz, which is a story about how in a post-apocalyptic future there's a order of Catholic monks that is trying to carry the light of civilization the best it remembers it through a sort of a Mad Maxy kind of wasteland, right? Which is a wonderful. First of all, there's a great deal of humor. The first story in there is about they have this litany. I think this is the Canticle for Leibowitz. This litany, which comes off this scrap of paper they have found in the ruins. What they don't realize is that it is a shopping list.
Shopping list, a
So when it
grocery
says
list. Yeah.
pound pastrami, right? They arguments about what does pound pastrami mean in the context of this litany, right?
Yeah.
So it's a delightful book, but
Hmm.
but again, if you're not willing to engage, now there's a cheat. Okay, here's the cheat that litterateurs engage in. Whatever they like of science fiction, they go, oh, that's not science fiction. Science
Right.
fiction, by definition, is the slumming it. But if somebody, but like George Orwell, 1984, right,
Right. Right.
or
Right.
Margaret Atwood, or whatever. Oh, that's not fantasy. That's magical realism, right? So first of all, there's a cheat going on. Okay, uh, they don't really mean it. What they really mean is the people who read that popular stuff over there are lowbrow, and I don't care to be associated with
Yeah,
them.
it's very similar what you just said. I'll sorry to cut you off, but real
Yeah,
real quick. What you just said reminded me as a philosopher, yeah, I majored in philosophy as an undergrad and did a big honors thesis in philosophy, and now I've been teaching philosophy for 10 years. It reminds me, it's similar to the idea that, and this isn't an original thought, but the idea that it's philosophy until we figure it out for certain, right? It's,
yeah,
the moment we figure something out, it becomes its own domain, it
yeah.
becomes its
It's
own.
engineering of some kind. It's
Right, or
yeah,
it's physics. Aristotle is doing natural philosophy and he's doing physics. And once we feel like we have a good grasp on it, it leaves philosophy. And then philosophy gets the scraps that are left over. So it reminds me of what you just said there with
yeah,
the moment that science fiction is accept it's kind of a no true Scotsman fallacy or whatever.
yes,
So yeah,
yeah, yeah. Kind of inverted, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So
1984 is the perfect example of that, Dave. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. No one says, ooh, science fiction, or Slaughterhouse-Five, ooh,
Yeah.
science
Yeah.
fiction. Well, isn't it science fiction?
It is
That guy
for
gets
sure.
bombed so
Oh,
badly in Dresden that he is knocked out of time.
the
And
Tralfamadorians.
and
Yeah.
that's right. He's on Tralfamador. He's going
Yeah.
back and forth. It's
Yeah.
totally
Yeah. Yeah.
science fiction. Do we go, oh, Kurt Vonnegut? No. Right. So
Yeah.
so there's just some sheer snobbery. But one, I guess that's one. Two, if you're not willing to ask science fiction type questions, you can't really talk about the future, and that the future matters. Three, in fantasy, and I'm not going to like go down the line and try and defend every genre. I think you could construct genre defenses for all of them. Um, the the tools and techniques of fantasy, first of all, are the tools and techniques of the oldest literature we have. Um, which, by the way, Nicholas Nassim Taleb, Anti-Fragile. What
Mhm.
that tells us is they're the ones that we know work. We know that the literary tools of dragons and witches and folk magic successfully accomplished the work of literature because they have continued to be used, just like for thousands of years, just like we know that tables work because they have continued to be used,
This
right?
is Edmund Burke. Yeah.
Yeah. So the and there's more, right? There's more to that. Like used to do what? Man, fantasy literature, and there's different languages you could use to talk about this. Okay, one way to talk about it is in terms of you can use sort of religious language and say, hey, look, these things are also the symbols of religion. These are symbols that we use to understand God. People writing fantasy literature, yeah, there is a bottom end. There is the 90% Sturgeon is talking about. In any genre, including literary fiction, there's just a whole bunch of stuff that sucks, right? Fine. Um, but good fantasy is grappling with things that have to do with God. And that's one way to talk about it. Here's another way to talk about it. It turns out that there's a whole lot going on in our brains that we cannot directly see. It turns out that we have this we have our conscious attention, right, is a construct of our left brain. Our left brain is putting a little model up in front of us all the time of the thing we're focusing on Jordan Hill, on the laptop, on the power strip over here, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and this lets us, it's great for letting us focus on the power strip and fix the fact that one of the screws is loose, right?
Yeah.
Um, because what it's doing is it's taking all of the sort of data that you can't look at that's back there in your unconscious in your right brain, and it's sort of putting it into a model to let you access it. But in the right brain is where all of the information is. It's where everything is thought about all at once. So it's where ideas of identity and meaning are, right? And including ideas about self, continuity of self over time, right? It's your right brain. The left brain is very susceptible to sort of ship of Theseus problems because it's just looking at a model. The right brain shows us continuity forward and backward in time around space.
Right.
And
Right.
but the problem is you can't look at it, right? So to figure out what's in your right brain, you have to use tools like analogy and surprise, and any literature can do that. This is what I would think good literary fiction, successful literary fiction does. But fantasy literature gives you tools like the Gorgon, right? Or Hades, or Achilles' shield, or whatever that are tools that have worked, that mean something. They connect to what's in our soul, what's in our right brain, and they're powerful. By the way, I think the fact that they have I think we should see that they're powerful from the fact that they have uh, a lot of those same symbols directly or indirectly have animated a lot of literary fiction novels that would say, well, I don't believe in vampires or angels or any of this stuff, flaming swords, but I will use images that come from, those stories. Um, so I think that's the answer. I think you're shutting you're cheating, you're being a snob. B, you're shutting down a bunch of powerful symbolic vocabulary.
Mm.
It's fun. It's actually fun. People like fantasy stories. People like hard science fiction. Maybe not everybody, but adventures in space. People love adventures in space. People like detective fiction.
Yeah, yeah, very, very well said. I think for me, like, I think it's partly the sense of being immersed in worlds that are totally different from our own. I don't want to repeat all the stuff that I said about what makes fantasy great from the roundtable that we did. Everything that you said, I totally agree with. Um, uh, but I do think that there's a sense in which there's very much an exploratory part of me as a person. And when I read fantasy or sci-fi literature, I am trying to explore worlds that are different from my own, that work in a different way. In sci-fi, you're often reading about the future and what the future could be if it operated on different assumptions, or if we planned our societies differently, or if we were exposed to different contingencies that are outside of our control. But it's also the sense of exploring new frontiers. And that ends up being one of the things that gives birth to science fiction as a genre and that makes it so urgent is the idea. In the 19th century, there was a sense that we had begun to run out of new frontiers. We'd explored the jungles, we'd navigated the seas, we'd mapped out the world and cataloged, most living species. And so there was and still is a sense that we need new frontiers, and I think we yearn from them. Um, there's a great quote, and I probably wouldn't agree with this person on pretty much anything other than this interesting quote. She said, I don't even know if I agree with this, but I just like it. I think it's stark. It's interesting. She says, and I think this connects to why I like science fiction. This is the University of Pittsburgh professor Alicia Bashara Bondo. She says science fiction is the genre that considers what strange new beings we might become, what mechanical forms we might invent for our bodies, what networks and systems might nourish or tap our life energies, and what machine shells might contain our souls. I also love the famous John W. Campbell quote that sci-fi lets you consider the problem before the problem hits you. So yeah, that's part of it for me too. So I thought I would switch gears here a little bit. There's a famous, you mentioned George Orwell. There's a famous George Orwell essay, Politics in the English
What a
Language.
fantastic essay. Everyone should read that.
Everyone should read that. It's so important right now. And he starts it by saying, and I'm gonna quote him here. He writes, "Most people who bother with the matter at all would admit that the English language is in a bad way." So let's talk about the industry a little bit. I
Yeah,
don't want to be doom and gloom,
yeah,
but I'll echo Orwell here and ask you if our little corner of the industry is in a bad way. I have my own totally unqualified opinions on the matter,
yeah.
but I wanted to ask you, what would you say is the health of the fantasy and sci-fi literary landscape, both creatively and commercially at the current moment? And we can include in that things like horror and historical fiction. In terms of what's getting published, what agents and editors are looking for, what's selling, what the current trends are. Are we, Dave, in a golden age, or uh, are we in dark times?
Yeah. What an interesting question. Um, it's probably worth reflecting that um, publishing as we know it is is a modern industry. It's the printing press that really invents, the business of a publisher acquiring the rights to a book or taking some book, investing money, printing a bunch of copies, and trying to sell them. Right. This is only about 500 years old. And my guess is that if we had had this conversation kind of at any time in the last 500 years, we would say, man, publishing is really in flux. And it turns out that I think one of the things you can say today is, man, publishing is really in flux. Maybe more than in the past. Um, so, first of all, outside of traditional publishing, one of the things that's happened is that the cost of publication has been brought down dramatically as in such a way as to democratize publishing, right? So you know, if you have access to a laptop and word processing software and internet connection, right? That's basically all the resources you need to write a book, to format a book. You can use free graphic software like GIMP. You can make your own cover. If you're willing to put in the time or invest money, you can do it yourself. And that means that, and by the way, doing it yourself includes you can put it on the Amazon bookshelf, which is the largest bookshelf in the world.
You
And
can record it on Audible. You can hire your own cover artist.
you can have AI voices do the audiobook.
None of
if
it's
you want to
hard.
do
None
it.
of it's hard. Yeah.
It's all, yeah. And that's amazing, actually, right?
Yeah.
There are some senses in which we live in a golden age. And
Yeah.
and from the point of view of a writer, one of the senses in which we live in a golden age is if you are trying to publish because um you have something you really want to say. You have an aesthetic vision, or you have something you really want to say about the nature of humanity, right? Or some tale that's really important. Nobody is going to stop you, right? No, like you have to be one of the 3 books a year that angers Amazon so that they delist you, right? And like there's not very many.
When Harry became Sally, let's see, there was the documentary on Clarence Thomas. There
Yeah,
was Abigail Schreier's
Abigail Schreier. Yep,
book. Yeah.
there's
So
a few. Mostly it's political, right? Uh,
those aren't even the Amazon's fine with those now. It's just it shifts with it blows with the wind.
right.
Yeah.
And by the way, even if Amazon didn't, you could still create the book, put it up on your own website.
Yeah.
You could still, purchase copies for a few
Oh
bucks
yeah.
each and sell them out of your house. Like publishing has become a thing that anybody can do. It's like recording albums for a band, right? The
Right.
technology, for $1,000, you can get a good microphone and a recording unit, and your band can record a whole album in
Yep.
somebody's. Make
100%.
sure the acoustics are okay. Somebody's living room, we can do it all there.
That's what we did. Yep.
Yep. So,
Mhm.
for writers, that's a kind of a golden age. For readers, there's a kind of a golden age also, which is one, you have access to sort of a wider and wider range of visions. I think also there for readers, there's a golden age that in the sense that everything comes back into print now. It basically costs nothing to put something into print. So especially, not only, but especially when things become public domain,
Yeah.
5 people jump on them and go, "Oh, Tarzan's public domain," or whatever.
Right.
We're gonna
Right.
do and they're like, you get on and look up Tarzan, Lord of the Apes, and there's like 14 different versions of the book you can buy, and you can buy a super deluxe leather, gold foil edition if you want, or there's like the $8 paperback, no frills, right? That's amazing for a reader. Now, this same phenomena has some downsides. One downside is, although yes, there are people out there who are using this democratized means of publishing as a way to publish their really distinctive, really unusual aesthetic visions. There are a whole bunch of people who are just using it to write mastodon porn or whatever they think they can sell on Amazon. So like all of literature is like this is this flood tide. And first of all, the good stuff from
Why
yesterday
did you have
comes
to
back.
use that example? That was hilarious.
But that's what it is. It's like astonishing trash. And it's these
Oh.
these neo genres that you read them and you're like, these are genres that have entirely abandoned the quest of literature. They're various kinds of porn, right?
Oh God.
Actual porn or not porn. They're just like wish fulfillment books. You are the hero. You win at everything. Man, it's great. Way to go. Oh, you level up. Here's some different game stats for you. You're great. Some more. Oh, you
Right,
level up.
right, right.
Like what are we doing? We've abandoned the quests of literature, which are, to understand myself, to have initiation like experiences through literature, to live vicariously, to better understand others. We're just going for the the lowest possible form of entertainment. Well, it's not the lowest possible. I should take it back. So, um, right, a lot of it's not actually porn. It's just like extremely cheap literature that only aims at entertainment, right? As mindless as possible. So, so the problem is there's vast amounts of that, and you as a reader have a problem because if you don't want to read that, you got to figure out, how do I find my way to stuff that I want to read, right? Whether that is, I'm going to start with the Western canon. And the good news is you can still figure out more or less what the Western canon is. A lot of schools have really, we'll get back to this. A lot of schools have basically abdicated the idea that there is a canon or that they should be teaching it, right? But there are plenty of books out there, and you can look up someone like the University of Chicago's Great Books program or something and figure out the list, right? So either you're out there pursuing the canon yourself, or you got to find some kind of tastemaker, right? I mean, I think that the one of the side effects of this is booktube. Is people who are trying to, because if you get to like a booktuber, you go, listen, that guy seems sensible. I've watched the first 5 or 6 of his episodes, and I tend to agree with his judgment. Okay, I'm gonna like keep watching him, and that'll be how I'm gonna get.
Yeah, booktubes become a big deal. And speaking
Yeah,
of the Western canon, you are speaking to the guy who started a show called the Western Canon Podcast. I do iWizard now because I just could not stay away. It was funny. I told my listeners, I said, I'm going to read the Western canon. I'm going to start with what is the Western canon, then I'm going to read the Iliad, then I'm going to read the Odyssey. And I got all the way up through Greek tragedy, and I kept I kept sneaking fantasy and sci-fi literature. I'd be going to bed and my wife would say, aren't you going to read the more Western canon books? Why are you reading fantasy and sci-fi? And I said, because I think this is I love the Western canon. I'm a teacher. Like I love
yeah,
this. I teach at a school that teaches that has the canon on its curriculum. I teach at an advanced academy for like gifted kids. So I love the canon, but there's a part of me that I think I want to talk more about fantasy and sci-fi. I think I'm into that now, um, and that sort of thing. So yeah. Anyways, go ahead.
yeah. No, and I'm the guy who, uh, literary critic Harold Bloom published a book called The Western
The
Canon.
Western canon, and he's got a long list at the end of the book. It's funny, Dave. I have teachers in my department who will challenge the idea of a canon, and I have to tell them the word canon comes from the Greek word kanoan, which just
Yeah,
means a list of rules
yeah,
or a list of like principles or rules or like some kind of code.
yeah,
Like no matter what you teach in your classroom, the moment you put it on a curriculum, it is a canon.
yeah.
And so the question is, as Harold Bloom says in the Western Canon, the famous quote, "He who reads must choose." What is
Right,
going to be on our canon, on
right,
our canonical list of
right.
great books? What is important to teach? Since we only have so much time, we have to be discerning about what we choose to read. Anyways, I have a long, an 2 hour long list of grievances
Yeah,
that I don't want to get into.
yeah. So, so that book, uh, circa 1997, maybe. I
Yep,
bought a
yep.
used copy in the store, or a remaindered copy for like $3 or something in the Strand in Manhattan. And I read the book, but like basically what I wanted was that appendix, because I felt like my education was inadequate.
Yeah,
And I was
yeah.
in law school. I said, I'm just going to read them. So I started at the back. You're exactly right. I'm like, well, I got Lattimore's translations of the Greek epics, and I went out and I got like all of the tragedians, and then Aristophanes and Gilgamesh, and Jane Austen, and I mean I probably ended up covering maybe 30% or something of the
Wait,
book.
you're going to read Richard Lattimore and not the new translation of the Odyssey by Emily Wilson, in which the proeme begins, "Tell me, O Muse, about a complicated man." I thought when I read that I was reading an Avril Lavigne song. But
That's awesome. Yeah, I read Lattimore. So
not Fagles. Lattimore's good. Lattimore's good.
yeah,
Fitzgerald is good.
yeah. No,
Uh,
I'm pretty sure I
Fagles
still
is
have the
good.
books on my shelf.
Okay.
I mean, I also read some Greek. So I have not read all of. I have sitting over there in the shelf in the room I'm in. I have read about a third of the Iliad in Greek.
That's
It's
impressive.
been a couple years since I was actually doing it, so I'm sort of paused.
You
And like,
paused after the long list of ships.
yeah, I got through the catalog of ships. I forget where I am now, but like it's there on my shelf. So aspirationally, one day I'll go. It is time, and I will pull it out and I will resume the Iliad. Um, so yeah, so okay, so the golden age, one of the side effects is that when you are a writer, it's hard to figure out that list of things. Who reads, he who reads must choose. Well, how do I choose? That's a challenge. We're figuring out the solutions now. People will end up with different solutions. I think we're going to have some competing canons. I think there's a kind of canon developing in universities which eschews most or all things written by the so-called dead white men, and I think that is a real problem, because we're basically choosing to live in discontinuity with all literature prior to about 1900.
I'm hoping that period is over. I'm hoping we're moving out of
Yeah,
this phase of, I would call it, it's barbarism, it's anti-intellectualism,
for sure.
it is philistinism, it is identitarianism, it's sick. And
Yeah,
the sooner we're out of this, the sooner this is in the rearview mirror, the better. And it's not because, again, you look at the the appendix of Western canon, it is filled with literature from Latin America.
sure,
It's literature from all over the globe, people
sure,
of different cultures and races, and
sure,
but Bloom's criteria for selecting these works is aesthetic greatness
sure.
and thematic profundity and
Yeah,
depth of symbolism and richness of character. I could go on. It's it's aesthetic criticism. It's not identitarianism. So yeah.
yeah. And if you want to understand the last 2,000 years of Western literature, if you don't start basically with the Greeks and the Bible, and maybe it's even argued the King James Bible,
Right, the king,
then
yeah.
you right, because we're talking about literature, not about uh, the truth value of the Bible.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right.
then again, you're just choosing not to have any connection with what went before you, and that's insane.
That's right. I had the professor from Emory, Mark Bauerlein, who wrote the book The Dumbest Generation. I had him on the program, and Mark is on the board of New College in Florida. He's a great guy. One of his favorite things to talk about is the fact that the you can criticize the postmodernist theorists and critics all you want, but one of the points he likes to make about them is these guys like Derrida and Foucault and Jacques Lacan and these Deleuze and Guattari, all these French postmodernist critical theorists. At least they had read the canon. His
Sure.
point was you have to read the bunk before you debunk.
Yeah.
What was that famous Prussian military general? He said, "Those who wish to command must first learn to obey."
Yeah.
If you're going to criticize the Western canon, you have to read it.
Yeah.
Sorry, you have to read it,
Yeah.
or else we don't. None of us have to listen to you or take you seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this this sort of ambiguous golden age, right, also creates a problem for anyone who sells a book, which is the market gets bigger every day. There was a time when what books were for sale were mostly the books in the bookstore. So you were trying to get your book in the bookstore and you competed against the other books in the bookstore. But now the market grows every day. And by the way, old things are being put back into print and
Yeah.
new things are being added into print, and none of it goes away ever, right?
Yep.
So you are trying to reach people in a market that is constantly growing. I think this is part of the dynamic um, that Nassim Taleb talks about when he says, look, in the future, in popular culture, we're going to be increasingly ruled by black swan events, by just wild something catches on and is just massively viral. And there's just no Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter is just like orders of magnitude bigger than anything else, right? And with all due respect to the Potterheads, it's not because it's orders of magnitude better than anything else. It has some virtues, it has some definite vices and problems, and it got lucky in some big ways. And great for J.K. Rowling, right? I no problem with that. But I think that's right. We've entered a time in which most books sell and are read by almost nobody. A few are read by a lot, and one or two are read by everybody.
So
And it
it's a
isn't,
Pareto distribution.
yeah, it's a power law distribution, and it's probably not 80-20. It's probably moving towards 90-10 or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
95-5 or something. And so, like, by the way, one of the things that suggests is that that's going to determine canon in a practical sense, right? That if I wrote a story now, I know from what I've seen that if I wrote a story now and I include in it definite, clear allusions to the biblical text, that's going to get less recognition than if I include in it definite, clear references to Star Wars or to Harry Potter, right? So, I mean, this is the age we're in, right? Who owns the canon? Man, arguably a few big multimedia companies, right? Whoever owns Harry Potter, what is that, Bloomsbury or somebody, Disney and all the properties it owns. So that's some of what's going on. Another thing that's going on is that publishing has long been a fairly left of center enterprise. Science fiction, fantasy publishing, sort of especially, has always been left of center. It's fandom, science fiction, fantasy publishing, and the community around it has always been very accommodating of kooks. In the past, they would accommodate libertarian kooks and even sort of arguably kind of right-wing sort of kooks. In the last 10 years, that has not been true anymore.
This was back when liberals were liberals.
That's right. So when that's right, to be liberal meant to include everybody. And maybe we're coming back to that again, but for a decade or so, it has not been the liberals in charge, it has been the left. And that has meant that not only do we scrap and game the awards to make sure we control who gets them, not only do we mau the editors and control all the review platforms to make sure that our people of the left, and we're talking about sort of identitarian, post-Marxist, woke left, right? We're not talking mostly about like Bolsheviks or whatever, economic left. It's cultural left.
Right.
To make sure that our people get all the publishing contracts, we're going to excommunicate even the dead. So John W.
Right.
Campbell, who was basically a right winger, he was also arguably the greatest science fiction editor who ever lived, used to have an award named after him.
Yeah.
And it was a award for best new writer.
Right. Right.
And it was given out with the Hugos. It technically wasn't a Hugo, but it was awarded with them at Worldcon. And I forget exactly when, but long about 2017 or 2018 or something, they took Campbell's name off it. Similarly, the World Fantasy Award used to be called the Howie, and the trophy was a very cool bust of H.P. Lovecraft, Howard
Yeah.
Phillips Lovecraft.
I remember this whole period.
Yes, and it is no longer. It is not
Yeah.
called the Howie
Yeah.
anymore. It's the World Fantasy Award, and the trophy is kind of a bonsai tree.
I remember an essay by Steven Erikson about how we need to, how we need to get rid of that. We need to put it in the dustbin of history. A lot of this, it just feels very sort of iconoclast, French Revolution, Maoist, the
Yes,
four olds. Let's tear down, let's rename Newton's laws. Let's start the
correct.
calendar over at year zero.
Let's
Let
number the days instead of having names. Let's create
yeah,
a yes.
and it's so sad. I really hope we're exiting that period.
I hope we are too. It's deliberate disconnection with the past or shaming of the past. all to the end of exercising political and cultural control. It is all
Yeah.
very creepy, insidious, and totalitarian.
Yeah.
And
And I
so,
don't think you have to be partisan to recognize that. I don't think that's a right or left comment. I mean, I know committed free speech style materialist Marxists who are against
sure,
this kind of
yes,
iconoclasm.
I know lots of liberals and also leftists, people who would say, well, basically I'm a Bernie bro, and
Right.
wokeness is really dumb. Or
Right.
as someone who's another editor who's very close to me recently, we were talking about wokeness, and she said, I am a liberal. I was raised a liberal. This has all gone way too far.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think there are reasons to be optimistic. I think you say you hope it's passing. I think there are reasons to be optimistic that it's passing. Um, and it's not we've at least entered a phase where you can fight on the other side and you're not automatically chopped off at the knees by Amazon or your bank.
Right.
Right, so I think the tide has turned. I don't know what it was. It's a long, interesting question. um, without wanting to get too controversial, I think it may be specifically transgender issues was just a bridge too far for a lot of very ordinary people who said, look, I want to be nice. I want to be accommodating. You can't put a guy in the race with my daughter. You can't put a guy in my
Yeah.
daughter's dressing room. And right or wrong, okay, you might think that that's a terrible opinion, but like, I think a lot of people basically feel that way. And I think you're not going to change it because you are asking them to expose their daughters to danger and shame uh, for the feelings of men who are arguably mentally unwell, right? So this is, again, you may disagree, but like, I think this maybe was the thing where people said, okay, actually, this has all gone way too far. Um, and you've seen in Europe, in England, and Scandinavia, some strong pushback, and here we're starting to get it too. So I think that's probably changing. But what that's meant for the last 10 years is new contract. So a lot of mid-listers who aren't who don't have enough wokeness points, who don't have enough intersectionality prizes, have just been dropped out of the mid list entirely, had to go independent. I'm not going to name them, but I know a number personally. And the prizes have all been, and the new contracts are all being given for, identitarianism. My agent, who is a good when we had this conversation like back in 2020, I had told her I thought I would write another book for her to go shop. And we had a call, and I said, I haven't done it. I said, the reason I haven't done it is because I've been reading what the publishers put out, and they're not going to take books from me. She said, yeah, I know. I have this problem with all my writers. She said, I shopped this biography for kids of Sally Chisholm, written by a woman. Not good enough. She was a straight woman, so they wouldn't take the book, even though it was a biography of a trailblazing woman, right? My wife's agent, pretty liberal, gay, New Yorker, pulling his hair out for the last several years because his writers, you know, and he does not represent like a bunch of Nazis, are just getting rejected. My wife's second book came out from the Random House imprint she had a contract with, and about the same time her second book came out, her editor tweeted, "I will never buy a book from a white person again." And sure enough, when my wife, who spoilers is Caucasian, sent in her option book to be reviewed, yep, they rejected it. Sure enough. So that's where New York publishing has been. Now there have been some exceptions, some people who by hook or by crook or by virtue of being in Hollywood and having connections have managed to kind of break through that. But in the meantime, there's been created this group of writers who, in a more normal kind of market, many of them would now be the mid-list writers of traditional publishing. And instead, after 5, 6, 10 years of just getting rejections and getting sometimes agents and editors just candidly telling them, hey, listen, you're straight. I'm not going to buy a book from you. I'm looking for someone who's, queer. I'm looking for someone who's Black African, whatever, preferably both Black African and queer. They've given up and they've just set up their own shop in indie publishing. That's a loss to all of us, to be honest. So I'm going to be candid here. It's a loss to them. It's a loss to those writers because there's great value in working with an editor who is good, not somebody you hire. Most people you hire are just like, they're there to make you happy. You pay them a few $1,000. They give you some advice. They tell you good things. You feel good. They feel good, right? But like working with an editor who has really a lot of experience, has published a lot of books herself, edited a lot of books, and has like actual power to say yes or no to you, working with that person to figure out how do I make the best book possible. That is great. That is great learning for writers. And these indies are not getting it. And they think they are, but they're not. And by the way, I say this, and some people are going to watch this and be like, Dave sucks. Whatever. We lost a generation of writers who should be better than they are because they're out there in the flood tide of Mastodon porn, writing whatever it is will sell. And there are a lot of them are writing made up genres. They're writing lit RPG. They're writing very clunky military SF. They are writing. I had a writer who I like very much tell me, "Oh, my stories are big tits and big robots, and I don't feel bad about it." I was like, "Oh man, but you should feel bad about it." I did not say that to her. And what got published instead is a whole bunch of gay space communism and stories about what it means to be Black, African, and queer in the 24th century, and it's not interesting. It's just not. It's not going to generate classics. And I think this is going to be looked back on as like a wasted period when we sort of we got stuck in this elbow, in this political elbow in the sewer, and just backed up, and good things that should have been happening weren't. So I think that's the state of publishing. I think there's reason to think some people in New York are trying to kind of move back the other way. I think some indie space, we're getting some publishers that are sort of trying to get beyond the model of write whatever Amazon wants to sell and back to let's find things that are good and make them better and then go advocate for them to to readers, which is what a publisher traditionally did. I think we're going to get out of this. I don't know how to solve the problem. The literature has become so massive. We have to, at the same time, what's happening, and man, I'm sorry. The problem, Jordan, is like, I start me talking, it's hard to stop me.
That's okay. I like it. It's all good.
Okay. In the wider culture, one of the things that's happening is, in the political culture in the West, and this is not just a US problem, had rule by experts, right? This is the white collar class has been the ruling class, taking rents for itself.
A managerial class.
Yes, creating more and more complex, making life more and more complex, but selling you the solution. Don't worry, the solution is be my corporate serf. Just get your insurance and your salary from me. Take orders, do what I tell you. Life's going to be okay, right? And that's breaking now, and it should break. But by the way, they have the same thing in Britain. You'll hear reference to the quangos, which means quasi-administrative non-governmental organizations. But it's what you're talking about is what's in the US, the NGOs, is these kind of non-governmental consulting firms and advisory organizations that get government money and have been making the real decisions. It's the same thing. It's the white collar
It's
class.
the administrative state. It's the cathedral. It's it's the managerial elites. It's the laptop class. It's It's all of that.
So the
Yeah.
problem is breaking of that system means that a whole lot of uh, institutions that have had credibility for the last 100 years, basically, this has sort of been our system since Roosevelt, uh, are have lost credibility. Right. So this is at the time when we're trying to figure out what the canon is, or if, have arguments about canon, a lot of the people and institutions that should be in a position to have a strong voice are now getting dismissed. Um, so I don't think that's a good thing. I think Harvard's going to lose to President Trump, and it probably should. But actually, Harvard shouldn't be an institution that is having that fight in the first place. Harvard should not be in these issues. Harvard should be an institution that says, hey, we are older than any university in England other than Oxford and Cambridge. We are very old. We've been here a long time. We are keepers of canon, right? And instead, it's going to break itself over its desire to free Palestine and have Chinese nationally, politically, not ethnically, uh, Chinese students who have handlers in PRC intelligence come being students at our university, right? So this is, I think, this is what publishing looks like today.
Well, that makes me this is a bleak picture because I'm Jewish, by the way, and
hmm,
um I'm someone who I'm not going to lie ever. Uh, it's the success, the traditional publishing. I'm going to say what I believe to be true. What is the Solzhenitsyn? Tell the truth or at least don't lie. Um, I can I can stay quiet. I can stay in my lane and work on my passions. And I went from a podcast that was very political called Western Canon Podcast to one that's a little bit more laid back and a little bit more disconnected from that sort of thing. But
oh, I came and spoiled it. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That's okay because I'm a free speech absolutist in the truest sense, and maybe that makes me almost a big lib. I would call myself a conservatarian, but I and there's part of me that believes in a philosophy. I hate to quote Mao Zedong here, but I just feel like we're in the age of letting a thousand flowers bloom, and I'm actually happy with that. I want people to be able to read what they want to read. Uh, but I do sometimes feel like there's often not even a demand for what traditional publishing is selling. Um, there's a very long discourse going all the way back to Plato in terms of do regimes create citizens or is what is it, the Andrew Breitbart quote, is politics downstream from culture or is culture downstream from politics? Well, it's both. I mean, if you go to East Germany and you look at the fact that so many years, 50 years later, East Germany is largely atheist and West Germany is almost entirely religious, you realize that it's not just politics is downstream from culture. Sometimes it's reciprocal. It's reciprocal. Sometimes you could look at the American Supreme Court. Sometimes the Supreme Court goes with the vibe, goes with the trends. If there's an ascendant philosophy or idea, sometimes someone like an institutionalist like John Roberts will say, we need to preserve the integrity and the institutional legitimacy of the court. So we're going to go with this. We're not going to shake it up. But sometimes these bodies, these institutions, these governments shape citizens. That, I mean, look, read Aristotle's Politics, read Book 8 of Plato's Republic. Regimes shape citizens. We know this. So sometimes I think that the publishing, fantasy and sci-fi, speculative fiction publishing, is doing too much to try to shape readers, and not enough listening to what readers have to say, listening to what they want, and kind of respecting that. But let's just back up a little bit, and then we'll get into the Ark. We'll get into the Ark Press. I just wanted
Cool.
to ask you one last question outside of that, which is, you have a ton of experience in this in this industry. You know a lot of the major players. You're tuned into the scuttlebutt. You're writing books yourself. You're on the front lines, vetting new manuscripts and new talent. You know, you've got your finger on the pulse of what's going on. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the, would you say are some of the dominant subgenres in SFF right now? So, one, and I know you have passionate thoughts about this. Is Grimdark still holding strong?
Yeah.
Are we seeing a shift toward, on the other hand, a more hopeful and optimistic narratives? Are there any storytelling trends that you're personally excited about or conversely tired of? I just wanted to ask you, in terms of the industry, the 30,000 foot
Yeah.
view of things from above. What's going on in terms of trends in the industry? Uh, what are you excited about, and what are you tired of? Yeah, what say you?
Yeah. So I think two of the big trends of the last kind of 20 years or so that I would like to see completely die are grimdark and hard magic. Um, the problem with grimdark is that it does attempt to engage on a level sort of philosophically with
Right.
the reader, but it's a very sophomoric argument that it basically amounts to a lie about human nature.
Right. Grimdark could have been, there's a famous Cormac McCarthy quote. Sorry to cut you off again.
Yeah,
Uh, if it's not about life or death, it's not interesting. I agree with Cormac McCarthy about that. That
yeah.
said, that doesn't have to be Grimdark in its current iteration.
I mean, this is a broad brush. People will say there are exceptions. Of course there are. Um, but if you say there is no heroism, humans are not altruistic,
Right.
everyone who ever exercises power does it merely to enrich himself.
Right.
Um, there is no self-sacrifice. It's a lie. It's a lie
Yeah,
against human nature.
that's a lie. Yeah.
It's and it's the kind of it's a sophomoric lie. It's the kid who has learned enough to sort of adopt this philosophically tough pose. Yes, I am emotionally tough enough that I can handle the grim truth. Uh, how about you sleep with me, baby? Is it's kind of what where that goes, and it should die. Um, the it's also not even an interesting lie. Like I just um, the interesting about humanity is why that isn't true. Uh, why is it if we're convinced that we evolved to uh, as a result of genes that were successful propagating themselves um, appearing in the next generation, then why are we not nothing but murderous, sex obsessed Lotharios? Why is there anything to human nature but that?
Why do we have free will?
Why do we have free will? Why do we make culture? Right? Human like to try and reduce us to that is just an obvious untruth, or at best a very incomplete observation. So
Hmm.
I would like
Well
that to
said.
go away. I think that there is. I'm not sure about. There are probably things I'm not that are not occurring to me. I don't read nearly as much fiction as I'd like to, because I'm editing or because I'm trying to write or doing other things. Um, I'm not sure that any of this kind of pushback has reached New York publishing yet, but there certainly are movements in indie publishing where people with goodwill, and again, these writers are sort of, God bless them, they didn't get into New York publishing. Some of them would have, some of them wouldn't in a better market. They're doing their best. They're out there, trying to have their own publishing businesses. And you get movements like Noble Bright, or I guess that's a genre, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
solar punk, uh,
Right.
which is sort of like, hey, optimistic. I think solar punk is optimistic, futuristic stories with a little bit of a kind of an environmentalist or a green kind of bent, right? Let's tell positive, upbeat stories about humanity in the future where we are living in harmony with the environment, right? Like, great, that's great. Or I had a conversation. What day I say? Today's Monday. On Saturday, I don't know. Recently, I think Saturday, I had a conversation with three guys who founded a online magazine called Incense Punk, incensepunk.com. And I think to their delight, they have found hashtag incense punk has gotten out of their control, meaning people are using it, not referring to them specifically, right? But referring to an idea which animates their online magazine, which is that, hey, the basic idea is this: in the future, humans are going to have religion. And so let's tell stories about humans in the future who meaningfully have religion, right? And doesn't that be like a made up religion? Oh, the priests of Orion. No, like they can be Jews and Catholics and Sikhs, right? In space in the year 2200, right? Let's have stories about that. And yeah, so I think there is in the indie space a lot of kind of that. And I think there will be, I think some publisher who can put together a platform that welcomes those kinds of writing will find that, oh, there are a whole bunch of pockets of readers out there that have been waiting for it and have been reading a lot of self-published stuff, but would be up for things that are more curated and maybe more literarily sophisticated. Hard magic. I don't know. Brandon Sanderson's reputation seems to be taking some hits now. I guess I don't have any comment on any of that. He himself has said that the only reason you need to write hard rules to your magic system is if the resolution to your plot depends on those rules. In other words, I get into the final showdown and, oh no, I don't have any tin to burn. Oh, but the evil wizard did not realize I can also burn uranium, and he has uranium slippers, right? Unless that's somehow the resolution. But it really has gotten out of control. I can't tell you how many times I'm selling books, fantasy novels at a convention, and I say to somebody, a shopping customer, I say, I write fantasy novels. And they say, oh, what's your magic system? Like, nope, that's the least interesting thing. That's nonsense. That's silly pants stuff. Or I was on a panel where it was a debate, me against the entire rest of the panel. It was like 5-on-1. They were all in favor of hard magic, and I was setting out the truth of the fact that it's an abomination. And a guy in the audience raised his hand with genuine perplexity and said, well, if you don't have a hard magic system, what can your character learn? What can he figure out to resolve the story in the climax if he's not learning something new about the magic system? Right? Now, that's a tragic question, because the answer is anything, right? He doesn't have to realize, oh my goodness, I can burn an alloy. I can touch two colors at the same time. What if I have see-through objects? I can use both, right? That's stupid. And I hope that's help us run its course. One thing that is clearly huge right now is romantasy. And a lot of books are trying to, in fact, even broader than that. You walk through a science fiction fantasy section at a bookstore and you look at the covers and you go, wow, these covers overwhelmingly are trying to appeal to women.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Now, I think that you don't have to imagine anything nefarious. All you have to know is women buy more books than men. And so publishers are just trying to sell things that are going to be attractive to women because they want to make money, because they want to stay in business, right? That is all very understandable. But the upshot of it is that the industry is just making it, for a couple of different reasons, increasingly hostile to men as writers and also as readers. And so I think that's got to change. Although I think that might have more legs, because um, if you are just chasing dollars, if you are just chasing financial
Yeah.
return on investment, always targeting the biggest audience is not obviously a bad strategy, right?
Yeah.
We're only
Yeah.
going to acquire books that women in their 40s will want to read, and then
Right.
the previous stuff, Name of the Wind, whatever, we're going to give it a more feminine looking cover, ta-da, so that those
Right.
will
Right.
buy it, right? So that may be with us for a while yet.
But that goes back to my point. That's a perfect point to make in response to my earlier point, which is that regimes shape citizens, but citizens also shape regimes. Um, I want women to have the books that they want. I really do.
100%.
Yeah, 100%. And but I also think that it works both ways. We do have a male reading crisis. And uh no, I'm not going to sit around and scold men. I do want men reading as many books as they were reading in the 50s. And on a per capita basis, men aren't reading as much as they used to. The numbers are pretty similar because of the population increase, but um, yeah, I do worry about male reading trends and things like that. There was recently, let me pull this up, see if I can find it. Hold on one second. Uh, yeah, there was a recent YouGov poll. 54% of Americans read a book this year. But
Ooh.
and I know, and I wasn't that surprised. Obviously, people who had greater levels of education, um, such as it is. We're reading more books than people who didn't. But the numbers break down, and when I post this video, I'll put up the actual graph. I'm looking at it here. This is a YouGov poll from 2023 and or 2024, and the data is from 2023. And if you look at it, men actually do like reading, and they're just interested in different literature that women are interested in. So men like history. So let's see. Mystery and romance books were read more by women in 2023, while men read more history and sci-fi. Um, so it's which of the following books have you read or listened to in 2023? Select all that apply. And if you look at the numbers, um, let's see here. Men are interested in history far and away. They're most interested in history. Um, So let's see. If you look at the US adult citizens, it's 36% of people who read books, read history books, 49% men. Men like politics, science fiction, biographies. They like biographies. They like, let's see here. Uh, if you look at it, yes, they like graphic novels more than women. They like academic books more than women. They like politics more than women. They like historical fiction more than women. Women like mystery and crime. They like uh, literary fiction a little bit more. Sorry to do this to you. They like romance. They like drama. And I remember that Google study where they actually looked at women's reading tastes in terms of, okay, yeah, women like romance novels more than men, like they love romance novels. What kind of romance novels do they like? So the guys at Google actually looked at it, and they basically like the archetype of women's romance novels is there's a billionaire or a vampire or a
Yeah.
Viking or some sort of power. It's Beauty and the Beast essentially.
Yeah.
And so men and women have different reading taste and that sort of thing. And I'm okay with that. But I do think that there's a responsibility there institutionally. Men, again, it's reciprocal. Yes, I have a poster in my classroom that says "Real men read books. Real men read books." So I think that there's part of it that's cultural, and I do want men taking it upon themselves to be more literate, to be more educated, to stop with the pornography and the sports gambling and the just
Yep.
I want men reading more and writing more and being more intellectual. I don't like anti-intellectualism. I want men to be to take
Yep.
to take command of the culture. But at the same time, I don't blame them when they walk into a Barnes and Noble and they enter the fantasy section and it is just romantasy top to bottom, and it's
Yep.
Holly Black, and it's who's the
Yeah. Sarah J. Moss and
Sarah J. Maas, and it's all about relationships and decadent sex, and it's just dripping with drama and sort of sexual court politics and all of this. I don't know. I just think, like, yeah, it's a problem with men, but it's also a problem with uh you know why do you think they're alienated? That's a big part of the problem as well.
sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been my entire adult life in sort of all of the applying for university, applying for grad school, applying for fellowships, applying for, you know, none of that. All of that has been openly non-merit based. It's all been skewed. And guess what? The people you skew it against get alienated. Um, it isn't all just white men, right? The Ivy League has done Asian students quite dirty, and skewing admissions against them, right? Uh, so, but of course that breeds alienation of people, and if you skew the reading material against a reader, you breed alienation. Now there may be technological solutions to some of this, right? I mean, some of this is if men can like find their way to a canon or to a suggestion, or they can find their way to a few good authors they like, then they don't need to go in the bookstores, right? Or, by the way, some of this, if it's pure cover manipulation, we're just going to put a more flowery cover on, Name of the Wind or whatever. Um, well, guess what? You can actually print double-sided covers. You can have the same cover, have a man cover and a woman cover on the other side, and you can put them both in the bookshelf. And it would only take away a little bit from your profit margin. You'd appeal to men, right? Like there are solutions out there, but I agree. We don't want to have a nation where all men or men overwhelmingly feel alienated from intellectual culture. And by the way, who is that terrible for? It's terrible for women. It's terrible for the women who get into universities and find they outnumber men, 60 to 40. And
That's right. But and then, I've heard complaints from women. Why are men grunting savages? When I date a guy, why can't I talk with him about books? Why is he only concerned about his sports and his Xbox? Like, why? Okay, well, again, like, you have to decide if you want to fix this problem or not. And I really do think it has a lot to do. Yes, do men have work to do? Yeah, men do, and so do women. They have work to do on themselves. But, like, also, like, again, I've been alienated. I've been alienated. A high school English and philosophy teacher who runs a booktube channel. I've been alienated when I walk into Barnes and Noble, and every single display table, and I go enter the fantasy and sci-fi section. 70% of the books, 65% of the books are romantasy, Sarah J. Maas, all of this. It's just not what I'm looking for. And sometimes I walk out of the store without a book, and then I go home and play the video games. Like, so I guess I'm not that different. But um, let me switch gears because I want us to visit this, and I don't want us to get I want to. This was one of the points that I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you've been up to over at Ark Press.
Hmm.
This is, you know, this is your new endeavor. This is the much gossiped about new publishing outlet. So, first of all, Dave, what is Ark Press? When did it open its doors? Why does it exist? What is its, I guess, what is its raison d'etre?
Yeah, we have one. Um, so Ark Press formally began in January of this year. We have not yet published anything. We have
Mhm.
3 employees. They're all editors. They're all writers. So our editor in chief is named Tony Daniel. He was himself kind of a literary science fiction wunderkind in the 90s and aughts. Did a lot of teaching and got sort of sidetracked into teaching and editing. A lot of writers find that they don't make as much money as they would like writing books, and so they do other stuff. This has been me. I'm still doing corporate training today. Um, so he's a great writer. He's a great editor. David Afsharirad and I are the senior editors, which is to say, you might as well call us junior editors. We're the 2 editors who are not the editor in chief. So, um, but David is he's sort of he's less personally interested in the science fiction fantasy side. His own personal aesthetic taste runs to detective and crime stories, and the music of Bob Wills. I'm way too breezily summarizing him. He's a very hip cat, not a science fiction and fantasy nerd like I am. So the we have sort of there's a couple different ways to talk about our raison d'etre. One of them is to say that we are trying to reach male readers. We are not going to publish a book that we don't think interests men. That doesn't mean we're trying to exclude women, right? We're not the He-Man Woman Haters Club. We're not going to have like pictures of impaled women on our covers to tell them we don't want them or whatever. But we won't publish romantasy. I can imagine us publishing a romance novel, but man, it had to be a really particular kind of romance novel. I mean, just like, for example, off the top of my head, something like The Scarlet Pimpernel is actually a romance tale. It is also the tale of a guy who is smuggling out French aristocrats from the terror and pretending to be a fop and an idiot, right? It is a romance story. Something like that we might publish. But we say we're a genre publisher, but the truth is we also, some of the novels we already have already contracted or are negotiating with are literary novels. So the truth is novels. We're going to publish novels. It's an interesting question whether we can sell literary novels and also detective novels and Western and historical fiction and fantasy all under the imprint name Ark Press, but we're going to try and do it. So one, novels that appeal to men. Two, pro-human. So we have a motto. The motto is the humans win in the end. This is how I close all of our how we close all of our YouTube broadcasts. Remember, the humans win in the end.
And what's your YouTube channel, just so my listeners can access that?
Yeah, it's called the Gopherwood Lounge. And I can send you links over if you want to put links in the description.
Sure, I will. I've actually seen. I just wanted you to say that so you my listeners could go there. But I have seen some of your interviews. You've had great guests, the editors that work for Arc, Christopher Rocchio and Larry Correa, who'll be
Yeah.
writing for you. So yeah, looking good so far. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. We have passed on some books because they are books in which the humans don't have any discernible victories. we we we've read this and been like, man, this is just so bleak. Philosophically, it is not right for us. Um, as kind of a subset of that, and let me also talk about we have a prize. We have a literary prize going on. Your readers are in plenty of time to enter. Your listeners, viewers, whatever the word is, subscribers. The Ark Prize is a novel prize. So the deadline for submitting a novel to us is October 7th. Which you think about that now, it's just June 9th, so that's basically 4 months away, right? July, September, October, November. Nope, 3 months away, right?
Yep.
July, August, September, October. No, 4 months. Okay. So I can count. 4 months away.
4, yeah.
And the manuscript is a novel, but it needs so what how long is a novel? 50,000 words or more. So I know that sounds like a lot, but if you have ever done NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month is you write a 50,000 word manuscript in the month of November. So we're giving you 4 NaNoWriMos to write 1 NaNoWriMo length manuscript. We actually gave you 7, but if you're hearing about it now for the first time, you still got 4 left. So the theme of the Ark Prize is, and you can interpret this however you want, but the theme is America 2076, right? So you do whatever you want with that. Doesn't have to be a science fiction novel. Could be fantasy, could be noir, could be whatever. A novel on the theme of America 2076, due October 7th. The prize is a publishing contract with a $10,000 advance. What we hope, and we've got a number of entries already. We expect we'll get more entries as the deadline gets closer because more people are, people who've already submitted to us either already had a novel manuscript that was pretty close or they wrote fast, right? Either of those is fine, but like we expect people will be giving us manuscripts at the end they've been working on for 6 months. We hope that there are 10 great novels and that we love, and we publish them all with contracts and advances, right? We pay competitive advances, and a first-time novelist. Look, a first-time novelist, unless you get really lucky, competitive advance is probably less than $10,000, right? So that's what we're really talking about if you're really stepping into this for the first time. And of course, we pay more for a person that has
A following.
has a following, has more of an audience, especially an audience following them for his books. So, look, we're optimistic about humans. We're also pro-America. We're pro-United States. That doesn't mean we're anti anybody in particular, okay? But like, if you're going to submit stuff to us and it's all about how this is the secret life of Benjamin Franklin, who was a lech and a vampire and he ate children for breakfast, like, we're not going to publish that, right? That is not, we're not the right people for that. If your story is about Benjamin Franklin, the hero, fighting the vampires of Philadelphia, cool, send it in, we'll take a look. So enter the Ark Prize. The third thing I should say about us, sort of why do we exist? And it's interesting. I'm really glad, Jordan, to have had this conversation the way we did, because we've really actually set up a background for why all of this is what Ark is about, right? So the third thing is we're not woke. We're not woke. We're not going to demand that the books comply with canons of wokeness. I have spent the day editing a novel that we're going to publish by an Israeli writer, it's fantastic. It's this kind of YA, man, in the 80s. You're not old enough to remember this, but in the 1980s, we were constantly being saved by kids on dirt bikes. Kids on dirt bikes would go solve the bank robbery, find the pirate treasure, defeat the evil psychic spider. Like, it was always kids on dirt bikes. They would have first contact with ET. It's that they're not really on dirt bikes, but it's kids in a northern Israel settler town that are kind of over the fence in dangerous territory, dealing with giants and strange ancient magics and so it is. I was going to make some specific point. Now I forget what it was. Anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's terrific. Was I making a point about? I don't remember. I think I was. For some reason in my head, I want to make some comment on cussing. I'm going to make it. This may not connect with what we
You
were.
were talking about the type of fiction you want to publish. It is
Oh yeah.
deliberately anti-woke, and as you were
Oh
talking,
yes.
yeah,
That
go
is the
ahead,
point.
Dave. Yeah.
That is the point. It's not that this book is like anti-woke, but like these 17-year-old Israeli kids joke in a way that will horrify people who want to control speech, right? Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
do. And by the way, as a
Which is
father,
how my students talk. When I
yes,
catch them in the hallways
yes,
talking to each other, that's how they talk.
100%. I
I don't like it, but that's just reality.
and by the way, the woke created this because the kids will push back against whatever you tell them. So when the woke came in a generation of,
Right.
of kids with these speech controls, the kids learn to comply when adults can hear them, and then they talk like the dankest 4chan members you could ever imagine.
And here I
Think
am
adults are
coming in
aware.
with a little perspective. And what I do when I hear this in the hallways, I say, "Excuse me, guys, please be gentlemen here. We're going to be gentlemen. That's
Right.
disgusting. So let's rein it in. You're in public, okay? It's not that I disagree with what they're saying
Right.
or want to suppress them. It's that
Right.
this is what is called being a gentleman, and I'm happy if you're anti woke, but let's be a gentleman.
Yeah.
Let's have manners. Let's have a sense of social savoir-faire. Let's, you know,
Yeah. I had a very similar conversation with my son when he was young and first encountering cuss words. I said, "Look, I don't think God really cares that much, but like it bothers your mom and your sisters.
yeah,
So, like context is everything."
you're being gratuitous.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So this is the point is right. We are not going to look, I'm editing this novel right now. I am zero going in and trying to say your characters can't talk like that, right?
yeah.
Nope. That's who it's very verisimilitudinous,
Verisimilitude. Yep.
similitudinous, uh,
Yeah, I got you.
similitudinous. It's very realistic. They do, right? Fine, no problem. We're gonna publish that book. We're not going to enforce woke codes on the books, and we're sure not looking for our writers on the basis of woke codes. It's just not going to happen. What are we doing? We're trying to find, look, all three of us at Ark are kind of snobs, and we're trying to find stuff that is good. Uh, uh, I've said this in on X last week, but like the publisher is its own castle, its own ship, right? What are we doing with it? It's not just about making money. There are better ways to make money. It's
Yeah,
to propose a viewpoint
yeah, yeah.
or a collection of viewpoints, and you have this ship, and you go, we're going to go out and grab this hero. It's the Argonauts, right? There's
Yeah.
Castor and Pollux, and there's Hercules and Jason, and they all have
Jason,
their
yeah.
own kind of, and we're going to go have adventures and be a certain kind of band of heroes together we don't all agree with each other on everything, but within a certain range of viewpoints we sort of broadly agree on a range of ideas that we at Ark want to propose, right?
That was the last Western canon work that I did before shutting down that podcast was
The
the
Argonautica.
Argonautica.
Yeah. Uh, that's cool. It's
All right,
fun.
Dave, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of my wife.
Okay.
About 2 hours ago, I reminded her I was having you on. Right now, it sounds like she's playing Zelda. And I said, you've met my wife, and I said, what
Oh
do you
yeah.
want me to ask Dave? And she said, what does he and Ark look for in a manuscript when considering it for publication? What do the folks over at Ark want to see in a manuscript? And I know you've got a website, and I
Yeah.
know that the website literally has guidelines for submissions and
Yeah.
word count and stuff like that. I'd rather you be more abstract than that.
Yeah.
I want to know that you're a major person at that company and you guys are trying to do big things. What are you looking for? And I know this touches on what your brand is and what you
Yeah.
want to be as a company. What say you on that? Yeah.
Yeah. What a great question. The answer is difficult. Um, because it isn't necessarily things that you can just go hone your craft. There there is a couple. I'm not going to say the names, but there's a couple that submitted 3 manuscripts to us, and we've rejected them all. I think I'm going to actually see them next week. So I'm going to say this to their face. I'm not going to tell you their names now, but and their craft is fine. Like the sentences all read well. They know you should open on something that's kind of hooky and right. But there's 3 different things they submitted to us, and they all feel like I have learned my craft well, and I kind of know the dials, and I'm going to kind of spin the dials and construct this story. Now I'm going to spin the dials and construct this story and spin the dials. And it all feels like they don't give a damn about any of the stories, right? Like it's just, here we go. Here's a story I made. Here's another story I made. Like none of them feels like there's a sense of urgency. Like there is a thing in here that really matters, right? By the way, this is one of the things that hard magic tends to kill, because like you spend all a bunch of time in your story wondering about the details of a completely invented bogus magic system instead of the human issue. So it's like I'm looking for that. I'm looking for like this feeling that the writer really cares. And that is more important than that the book be polished from a craft point of view, right? The book I'm editing now, from a craft point of view, he's good. English is his 3rd language. So like, there's some basic English polishing that's going to need to happen, right? By the way, both his 1st and 2nd language don't have perfect tenses. So like, that's where he slides all over the place, is when he's trying to get perfect and pluperfect, and it's like just tough to get right. So, we got another manuscript. We have not made this an offer, but like I think we will. This manuscript, which is about, it's kind of like, well, the idea is there is a jaded marketing executive who's kind of lost all feeling in life, and he gets it back when he encounters an artist who replicates acts of terrorism, including killing people, as her art, and it makes him feel alive again. And so he starts to become involved with her and trying to incorporate that into his marketing.
Sounds like Fight Club.
Yeah, but like if written by Banksy, right? So,
Yeah.
And again, we read it and I was like, man, some of this manuscript really sings. Some of it needs some work, but he had like he had the big idea, and he clearly had passion. But by the way, this is a guy who's worked in marketing for like 20 years. So like this is not an abstract question for him. So there's love, there's feeling in the book. So I went to him and said, "Hey man, I really like this. Can you take a stab at revising it?" And I think I suspect we'll pick it up. So so like the hard answer, right, is that I don't know really what to tell you, because I'm gonna respond to a book or I'm not. One of the ways Tony Daniel said something early on that was sort of helpful for me, but maybe not helpful for the reader or for the aspiring writer. He said, "Look, if you're going to acquire a book, you have to be willing to read this thing 4 times, because you're going to get it back and get it back and get it back. So if you don't like the book that much, don't acquire it, because you're just going to make yourself sad." And I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting point."
Well, so let me ask you then. Yeah, that's a great point. Tony is obviously right about that. Um, are you looking for debut authors, or are you trying to scout for seasoned talent? What's the equation in terms of how you balance what would you say, new voices, while also supporting established authors? What are you guys ultimately hoping for?
Yeah, we like to get all of those. We have a mix of those. Another a related question, we do get gossiped about on the internet, and called names sometimes. Um, and One, we love to have debut writers. We're working with some guys who were debut writers. We're also working with some writers who like had a career and then kind of got booted out because the whole New York publishing went super woke, and we're working with them on books.
Well, I'll share this on the point that you just made.
Yeah.
So take me. Um, in some sense, I'm a debut. I would be,
Mhm.
my wife and I have been working on a fantasy novel
Oh, I know.
for quite a while. I've published 7 or 8 articles at Quillette, the
Mhm.
American Conservative, Minding the Campus, um,
Yep.
a bunch of different outlets,
Yep.
and so I guess I'm not a debut author. My
Mhm.
wife has published 3 or 4 articles in Science. She peer reviews regularly. She's a college professor.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I run a YouTube channel.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I published, yeah, 8, 9, 10 articles, something like that.
Mhm.
And that sort of thing. So I
Yeah.
don't know what counts as like a debut
Credit.
author or not,
Yeah.
but I guess, and as you point out, you were talking about the some of the rumors and the drama that's going on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, what are you guys looking to be? Are you looking to um, mentor sort of younger, newer voices, or is this sort of, I noticed that you guys have Larry Correa coming on. Is
Mhm.
that sort of more the model that you're looking for? Sorry if
Yeah.
that's blunt or whatever.
No, no, that's fine. Yes, people. We also have people. So one of the things that some of the indies have said is, "Oh, these guys are only going to buy stories from people who have an audience." Look, Larry Correa, or
He's great, by the way. I think he's just tremendous. He's fabulous, by the way.
yeah.
But I'm just wondering what
No,
you
no, I hear
guys are
that.
hoping to do. Yeah.
People have also noticed that we got book deals with a couple of with Peachy Keenan and Megan Basham, both of whom
They're
are
great as well. I love both of them.
they are great. They have both written before.
Yeah.
So what people have said is, oh, they just have lots of Twitter followers, so that's why Ark wants them. Well, those people both already have writer editor relationships with Tony Daniel.
Their
That's
Twitter
how we got
followers
to.
are also because of their talent. So
Yeah,
you could look at it either way. Oh, they have Twitter followers, so like Ark Press is eating them up, or
right.
they have Twitter followers because of their talent and because of they say things that are interesting
Yep.
and important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's kind of some of the things I'll touch on some of the things I know have been said. Do we only want male writers? No, and we have never said that we only want male writers. From before we started talking about ourselves, that we had about half a dozen writers lined up, and 2 of them were women, right? So from the beginning, we said, look, male readers is who we want to make sure we include. We're going to have some female writers. So if you're a woman writer, send us stuff, right? If your book is very female oriented, we're going to pass. But that doesn't mean we think that you're not awesome. Um, 2, is it great if a writer has a big social media presence? Sure, it's a plus. Is
Of
it
course.
necessary? It is not. Is it great if a person has really just amazing English chops? That is great. Is that necessary? It is also not sufficient, right? It is also not sufficient. Um, the the you know, the thing that really has to happen, we will have new writers. We have some now. We're going to have writers who are anonymous. One of the books we're going to publish is called The Pickle Factory. It is a literary send up of the CIA as a bureaucratic institution written by a former CIA officer. We're not going to put his name on the book. So there is no like massive social media platform out there. This is like publishing a book by an anonymous guy. Okay. By the way, it's totally hilarious. Like they give him $10 billion and they won't let him read the file. So like he's got to spend $10 billion and he can't know what his mission is supposed to accomplish. Absolutely.
Kafka-esque.
Yeah, totally. Um, so we're going to have new writers. We're going to have veteran writers. We're going to have people who have written nonfiction before and now they're taking their first step into fiction world. They will we have some writers with a big following? Yeah. What we hope is that 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 following will come and look at us, and some of say Larry's or Peachy's fans will be like, "Look, I'm here for Larry. I'm here for Peachy. I don't care about the rest of the stuff. That's fine. That's got to be fine, right? But what the hope is, some of them will come and stay, right? And so they would pick up a Jordan Hill novel, a Jordan and NIKKI Hill novel, and we're like, right, that novel will benefit from the audience that other people have brought, some of whom have stuck around because they're interested in the larger enterprise. It does not mean you have to have a lot of a big social media account. We're aware of that. We never say, this is why we should buy this person's book. Never once. Don't have to necessarily be a veteran. Don't have to be agented. It's okay if you have published stuff indie before. By the way, I got this, man, the first weeks, this question, every day somebody asked this question, and they inevitably got mad at the answer, okay? They would say, will you consider republishing my series of which I have published the first 7 books? And I said, no. And I said, the economics don't work out for us. People will get mad and say, well, this book hasn't got the attention it deserves. Well, like, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I don't know, but you're not going to re-edit the 7 books here according to how I want them. And I'm not going to take a financial risk on committing to 7 books. And this book may have sold already to every single person who's ever going to read it. Like, it does not work out. We have people, this is sort of tangential maybe, but we've had people, a couple different people who have kind of made a partial approach to us, and then so here's one. He put together a pitch, what we called a treatment, and sent it to me. And I was like, hey, this sounds good. You're telling me the novel's not finished, so I might be interested. I will definitely be interested in reading it. I could be interested in buying it. Send this to me when it's done. And he got kind of starchy and said, what, you could be interested? He said, I'm not going to try and finish this novel unless you show me your contract. I said, I'm not going to tell you contract terms when all you've shown me is like a couple of pages of synopsis, right?
You have to finish the book.
And he was like, and he went away. And great.
How do you know if that person, just representing the publisher's angst and frustration here, how do you know if someone hasn't spent a year and a half polishing 2
Sure,
chapters of their book?
sure,
And the
100%.
idea, and that they're not capable of following through and really putting their money where their mouth is and walking the walk. Like,
100%. Also, people who sell a lot self-published sometimes kind of go, oh, you obviously are going to want to buy my books because I sell these a lot self-published. Well, I have been around too long to buy that. I have seen traditional publishers time and time again go and pay big advances for some writer who has sold a bunch self-published, and it almost never works out because whatever made it work for the self-published series is not replicable, right? And whether it was just they were in the right time in the right place, they had luck, they were using strategies sometimes that don't make economic sense if you're a traditional publisher. So so like, really, by the way, this is a way to see like why go watch the Gopherwood Lounge. Well, the reason is, if you're interested in selling a book to Ark, a big subtext of the Gopherwood Lounge is we are trying to show you who we are and what interests us so you know how to sell to us. And this is why we have episodes where David F. Shirirod mixes tiki drinks, or where we talk about like the Tony Daniel's favorite novel about Texas history, or he and I talk about Flashman and
I love tiki drinks, by the way.
We're going to have more of that. We've had a special request for, can we please get an episode where we do non-alcoholic versions? So we're gonna have more tiki drinks. So that is us trying to say. Now I know if you're a writer and you're like, look, I want to hit all the publishers. I don't have headspace to spend hours looking at your YouTube channel. I get it. That's not an unreasonable decision, right? But like, we are trying to put the information out there so you can get to know us, so you can try to write books for us, because that's the bottom line, right, Jordan? Is like, I'm going to like the book so much that I want to read it 4 times. I'm going to like the book so much that I want to go on podcasts with the author and be like, man, you're going to love this story. It is about giants, and they have this totally weird Talmudic way of speaking, and they have this magic system based on the 7 days of creation, and you have to use the feathers of angels to inscribe glyphs so that one day can communicate to another day. And man, it's just the coolest shiz, right? I have to feel like it's just the coolest shiz. And your book might be technically really awesome,
Yeah.
and I just doesn't hit me that way, right?
Yeah.
So that's the hard truth. It just has to have something in it that I can't tell you how to do it. But what I can do is give you lots of ways to know me,
Yeah.
and then you can go, oh, I kind of get the stuff that
Mm.
these 3 guys like. Let me try and pitch something that's up their alley.
All right. So, last question for you here, Dave. So, maybe you could help to dispel some of the rumors and the drama. Actually, I'm not sure why there's so much drama surrounding what the establishment of a new
Mm,
publishing house. It seems
yeah.
fairly mundane, to be honest with you. I
You
guess some
think?
of it has to do with the notion that Ark was going to buy Bain Books, or at least that's what was
Oh yes.
reported, but
Yeah. This
Bain
is
said
John
no.
Delarose.
Yeah, so like, and the sense I get is that some of it has to do with the idea that Peter Thiel is an investor in this. If that's true, I don't know why it would be particularly controversial. In
Yeah.
fact, that'd be really, really exciting knowing that there's some real backing. You need
Sure.
investors if you're going to compete with some of the bigger publishing houses. I mean,
Sure.
he already has experience with publishing, seeing as his investment group funded Passage Press. So, can you confirm any of this? Disabuse me of any of this. I just, what's interesting is that this is such a welcome development on the scene. I'm so happy that this is happening. There couldn't be a better person running this, in charge of this. It's just so optimistic and wonderful that this is happening. Talking with you at that Chinese lounge,
Yeah.
just I don't understand why there's so much gossip and
Yeah.
uh, slander, and
Yeah.
it just seems like a positive development. Why is this? Why is
Yeah.
this controversial?
Well, welcome to the world of John Delarose. So John likes to position himself as the last great conservative or the last great Christian in science fiction. He may be either of those things. I have not seen any evidence of it. I know people who know him and insist that it's all a put on. What I know about John is that he his tactic is if you will give him information he wants, great. And the minute you stop, he tries to make you the story by making himself into a martyr. And this is what happened. So he came out with an article that was wrong in every assertion that it made. Wrong in every assertion that it made. Okay? So he said uh he said Peter Thiel tried to buy Bain. Peter Thiel did not try to buy Bain. It just didn't happen. He said, and then when that failed, Peter Thiel founded Ark. Well, that didn't happen either. Now, we are a sister press with Passage Press. We have investors. I have not seen the cap table, right? I don't know whose money is in there, but the idea that Peter Thiel is running around doing these things is just not true. He also said this is a civil war in conservative science fiction, and we were designed to antagonize or attack Bain. Categorically not true. Categorically not true. He also said, and this is how I tried to have a conversation with him and tried to be like, listen, guy, your sources really have misled you. Okay. So John said in the first edition of his article, he said, all of Bain's contracts with its authors have a change of control provision. He called it a kill switch, so that if ownership changes, the author gets all their rights back. He published this. I said, listen, your information generally is not good. Your sources are giving you rumor and innuendo. I said, let me point out this specific point. Bain contracts do not have this provision in them. I can tell you as a guy who was who has seen some Bain contracts in the editorial side and who has, whatever the number is now, 11 or 12 books with Bain. There is not some kill switch where Bain is going to lose all of its copyrights if someone else buys Bain. He said, I have 3 witnesses that say that they do. I said, your guys are wrong. He said, these are some of the best writers in science fiction. I said, I don't care who they are. He said, they're wrong. He said, David Weber. I got it from David Weber. By the way, I told that to Larry Correia. Larry told David, because like 3 hours later,
David would
Weber was
never.
texting me indignantly saying, I hate that man. I never would have said any such
David
thing.
would never.
Yes.
We all know that.
So I said, okay, go talk to your 3 sources, and you send me back screenshots of these provisions. And like, sure enough, 2 hours later, he was like, okay, actually, they have all looked their contracts and they all said they were wrong. That's not what it says. Yeah. So as I said elsewhere, I don't think he had 3 writers. I think he was talking to a disgruntled Bain former employee who was a complete doofus, and also a former Bain sort of junior writer who basically has just been dumped. I think he had sort of a couple of axe grinding exes who were his sources. Anyway, to his credit, he changed that provision. That's the right thing to do. Okay, he changed that statement in the article. I was trying to get him to see they should take the whole thing down because like he was just publishing rumors that are just basically wrong, right? And certainly the overall tenor, which is Ark is going after Bain, is just completely nonsense. It's not rooted in reality at all. So yes, we are publishing a series by Larry Correia, right? Larry Correia is also publishing a series of Athon. He's also publishing stuff on his own now. Larry Correia is making a career move where he is just diversifying into different publishers, and we are one of the beneficiaries. We did not go poach him, right? We did not talk to him until after he already had his plans with Athon and his self-publishing in place, right? It's not poaching from us. It's not us going into the secret Bain archives and getting his personal contact detail or whatever. Also, just all 3 of us are friends of Larry's. I've been to Larry's house to shoot pistols on his private range in his driveway. Okay, like it's not. Oh, you muted.
I heard you're not a great shot, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not. That is correct. That's funny. Is that part of these rumors?
No, I heard that on the Gopher Lounge.
Yeah,
You were in the background, and it was Larry and the other guys at Ark.
yeah.
And they said, you know what? Dave is like the smartest guy we've ever met, but he can't shoot the
This
broadside of a barn.
this is correct. They were all the instructors he had there were basically making fun of me. Although I kept all of the safety rules, I was scrupulously compliant with. I think they were grateful for that.
I bet.
Um, so that John wanted more information out of me, and I just like, okay, if you're not going to understand me and you're not going to take down your stuff that is basically just rumor, then I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And he was in my fan Discord server because, look, Ark has an X presence and it's got a YouTube presence and it's got a website. Okay. But I said, hey, look, I'm going to create an Ark channel on my YouTube server. And so people can kind of, as a way to talk to writers who are interested. And I was very promiscuous in giving out invitations. And John Delarose is in there. And John kept posting his own stuff in sort of the main channels rather than in the places where you could post your own work. And the mods told him to stop, not me, the mods. Okay. And he refused. And they said, well, you're not complying. And he said, boot me then. So the mods booted him. All of this not done by me. All of this, done by the mod. By the way, after the fact, the mod came to me as he always does when someone leaves and is like, I'm really sorry, man. And I said, it is fine. This is fine. He told you to boot him. Well, what John Delarose did is went on Twitter and said, Ark Press are liars. They're like everybody else. They just canceled me. This is my favorite. He called me a giant faggot on Twitter. And right. So this is the controversy is that John Delarose, I think he's 90% of it. And then there are a few other people out there who kind of watch and if there's anything they think they can disagree with, I'm not going to tell you Twitter handles, but like we notice you guys doing this stupid crap. If they think they can like engagement grind a little bit, oh, Ark said this, I'm going to go call them out as hypocrites. Then they'll screen cap and go somewhere in Discord or Facebook and be like, look at this crap they said. It's not true. They said they were going to publish men. They have two women writers. What the crap is this? Or this publishing model is stupid. Look how all of their writers have big Twitter accounts. It's ridiculous. It's John Delaroz, and it's some guys. Maybe they've got chips on their shoulders against traditional publishing, which I get. I've been through the same hellscape of the last 10 years that you all have. Okay. Um, or maybe they just think, hey, because we're up over 2,000 followers now, and 4 months of being on Twitter, we're doing all right. Maybe they think, hey, this is a way for me to get attention, is to go just engagement grind off this account. I think that's the other source of kind of rumors and controversy. I think overwhelmingly what we get is people who respond to us and are like, man, this sounds awesome. I'm working on my manuscript. Hey, let me submit my manuscript. People come into the Discord server. There's a very lively, constant running conversation of about 150. Look, in theory, it's my fan server. A lot of those people have not read a book by me.
So Ark has a Discord server?
No, this is the thing, is it's mine.
Oh.
I have a Discord server. It's
Why
my
am not why am I not subscribed to that?
I'll send you an
I
invitation.
didn't know it existed.
Well, for a while, I was literally sharing invitation links on Twitter. It's like, hey, anyone who wants to, right? So we got, I don't know, 200-300 people in there. It's reasonably lively, and it's a bunch of writers, mostly kind of aspiring writers who are talking to each other and talking to me, right? Um, Mostly we have very positive engagement. So I know John Delaroz is out. There's gonna, every time there's any kind of like, oh, more information about Ark, he's gonna try and make it sound like I told you so. I am owed an apology. No, he's not owed an apology. He's not a martyr. We didn't cancel him. He called me giant faggot. So like, if anyone gets an apology, I have to tell you what it is me. Uh, and I did nothing but try to get him away from saying things that are rumors only and that are false, right? So hilariously, when John Keeperman was this week before last, kind of said, "Hey," and I had told John, one of the things I said to John is, "We are an affiliate of Passage Press. That is not a secret. We have said that from the beginning." Well, Keeperman came out and said it also, right? Great, awesome. We got a bunch of attention. All very cool. Delaroz DM'd him and tried to pitch him on a book, and also said, "Please make the Ark Press guys unblock me." Like, don't be an a-hole, and I won't block you. You got blocked for calling me names. So anyway, that's it. I realize, well, your viewers can decide whatever they want. Some of them will no doubt be sure that John Delaroz is the great conservative and Christian of science fiction. But if anyone thinks maybe that's not the whole story, you are welcome to reach out to me, join the Discord server, submit novels to us, hang out on X, etc.
Well, I'm happy to. I I don't like any of this. I don't think we should be. I've listened to some of the videos of John Del Arrows, and I don't like them. He spends about a third of every video advertising for his brand, his comics, his
Sure.
books. Um, he praises himself, to the skies. He is, yeah, I don't really trust him. So that's why I wanted to have you on and talk to you about this and ask you direct questions. And you've been very, very clear and detailed and forthcoming. And so I really appreciate that, Dave. You're the best, and thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. So,
Oh man, I'm totally pleased. The one thing I've been thinking for the last 2 hours, I should have said right up front. I think that's the Andy Warhol banana on the wall behind you, isn't
My
from
wife
Canon.
is a big fan, so I wanted this, this one over here, the sort of romantic 1950s masculine guy kissing his woman, and my wife is a big fan of the of what is it? Not the Dandy Warhols. That's the
The Velvet
1980s.
Underground.
The Velvet Underground.
There it
She's a
is.
big
Yep.
fan of the Velvet Underground, so she wanted this one. So we compromised, and I really appreciate you coming on, Dave. I think the world of you, and I really hope that that you. I think you guys are doing God's work over at Ark Press, and so thanks for joining me, and I hope you come on again sometime.
I absolutely will. Jordan, thanks for having me, and I hope you will let us read your manuscript when you have it ready.
Yeah, really excited to do that. Really excited to send you that. So, all right. Talk to you later, buddy.